Welcome back to the Panther Business Briefing. I'm your host, Jayson Reed, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Baran Pourtahmaseb-Sasi. For today's 7th official episode, and our second on our current series about artificial intelligence, we'll be continuing our discussion from last week with Dr. Pouyan Esmaeil Zadeh. Zadeh serves as an associate professor in the Department of Information Systems and Business Analytics here at FIU. He holds an MBA from Sprott School of Business at Carleton University in Ottawa and a doctoral degree in management from the University of Putra in Malaysia. He came to FIU in 2014 as a postdoctoral associate, and his research spans a broad spectrum of AI topics, including machine learning, large language models, natural language processing, and the ethical implications of AI integration. Notably, his work often focuses on the intersection of AI and healthcare, exploring how AI technologies can be leveraged to improve clinical outcomes and streamline healthcare processes. Doctor, thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. We'd like to start off by having you tell us a little bit about what brought you into the field of healthcare and what catalyzed your enthusiasm in connecting this with technology-assisted analytics and one of your specialties, robotics.
So my research generally is about intersection of AI and also healthcare. And so why it is important for me to just talk about like AI in healthcare, because again, that's a quotation from like Mike Twain. So there are two important days in your life. Number one is the day that you're born. Number two is the day that you find out why. So the day that I find out why is exactly just show me the passion. So my passion lies in contributing to research on AI in healthcare. So most of my work just focus on the integration of AI into healthcare. And I just envision like a future where healthcare is no longer just about treating illness, but about like prediction. It's about like preventing it before it even begins, where elderly care goes beyond mere survival and also foster longevity, dignity, and also quality of life. So where mental health support is available 24/7. So offering compassionate and also personalized assistance whenever it's needed. So that's the way that I just imagine a world where for example, surgical precision surpasses human capabilities powered by AI assistant like robotics. So that's another project that I have for robotic surgery. And also the new drugs. So where new drugs are discovered through AI-driven research, and also personalized medication can tailor treatment to individuals based on their genetic profile, environment, and also lifestyle. So when rare diseases and cancer can no longer a death sentence, but curable. So through the integration of AI and also biotechnology, where we can just use wearable devices for real-time data analytics, for digital twins, that digital twins can just monitor your body continuously, and also enable early interactions and also transforming healthcare into protective and also proactive and also patient-oriented system. So that's the reason that I actually started AI in my research, and these are some of my goals that it just help me to go through different types of AI projects. But if you want, I can talk about each one in detail, because there are lots of AI projects that I have been working on. But if you want, we can talk about each one in detail.
Yeah, well, I think we've got a kind of a diverse set of questions. And Baran, if you wanted to ask about the sort of generative AI and large language models.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest, it sounds like we could have one episode alone dedicated to just one question that you're kind of covering in your introduction. So there's really so much that we could go into. So let's start with the kind of like some historical context for the conversation. And in the case of generative AI and large language models, were there any particular breakthroughs or innovations, let's say around the early 2010s, that maybe during your research and studies and projects, you were able to begin to apply them, or they could have been generally applied?
Okay. So if you just let me, so let's just talk about technology progress because you just talk about like history. So I'm gonna start with this, then I'm gonna answer your question because this can answer your question alone. So in like around like 1999, 1998, like early 2000s, so we often heard the phrase that is said like, there's a website for that, right? There's a website for that. So for every like needs, so that's the rise of dot-com era, right? Around like 2010, so like we have another phrase that was very famous. There's an app for that, right? There's an app for everything you want, for all the tasks. For example, like there's an app for losing weight. There's an app for tracking your sleep. There's an app for budgeting and also managing your finance. There's an app for ordering food. There's an app for this, that, right? So that's gonna be the hype for that time. So then today the popular saying is that there's an AI for that, right? There's an AI for that. Why it is very important? Because this is important after the ChatGPT moment that we have around like 3 years ago. So ChatGPT, that's the rapid rise of large language model and also generative AI. And these days, so everyone can use like some large language model, conversational AI or generative AI, whatever you're going to call it, in order to just use it for image generation, for video creation, for song generation, for customer service, for coding assistant, for data analytics. So that's one of the biggest changes that we have exactly after the ChatGPT like launch around like 3 years ago. So, but the post-ChatGPT era, like these days, that sparked the belief that AI can perform nearly all different types of cognitive tasks, from writing a novel or to design a very good website. And so that's why there is an AI for that. But after that, so the next trend is what? The next trend is that there's an agent for that, right? There's an agent for that. For all task or purpose that you have in your mind, there's an agent. So this is an emerging shift that we're gonna have in AI. But what is an AI agent? AI agent is gonna be like an autonomous system that is capable of receiving in this environment perception and making decision and taking actions to achieve some specific goals with minimal human intervention. That's the key. That's the goal, right? So what is the key idea here? The key idea here is that the agent can independently on your behalf, beyond just recommending, it can just like execute some task that you define, like buying the ticket, like adjusting your plans, or even like handling a refund if like prices drop. So this is something that we have is as a kind of agentic. So we call it agentic AI. It's not even like talking about large language models. So because we already like passed that, so this is the agentic AI. So that's going to be another one. But soon, what is the next like popular saying? The next one is that there will be an AGI for everything. So AGI is the artificial something that can just help you with all different like human tasks. It's not only for a specific task that you define, for everything in general intelligence. So, but when we're gonna get it, so some people say it's gonna be in like 10 years, it's gonna be in 20 years. Some people say it's gonna be like longer, or some people just think that is better to never reach that AGI because it can just control everything and replace humans and blah, blah, blah. So this is kind of like progress that we have. So the one that you asked about like the shift of large language model, I believe we already passed that. So it's not all about generative AI. Now is about agentic AI. So we are thinking of agentic. Like many companies these days are trying to recruit agents. They want to have agent for customer service. They want to have agent for finance. And they want to have like multiple agents that working together instead of have like, for example, different AI. So they want to just moving to agentic AI. So that's going to be the next shift. I also work on another project that we just fine-tuned large language model, not for healthcare providers. We fine-tune it for patients. It means that so patients can now use those like fine-tune a large language model as like symptom checkers or to receive some preliminary, for example, diagnosis. In some cases of like minor ailments, so these AI generated recommendations might be sufficient and convenient, right? But in some cases that is kind of serious, like serious health concern or conditions, so AI can just serve as a first step and not the final word. So, but this like AI can just connect you with healthcare professionals for a second opinion in order to make sure so expert human judgment also is involved. So that's another project that we have. But I've done lots of projects for like using generative AI or large language model in business. So as I mentioned, one of the best one is that also we have it in also some classes that you can just use one of these pre-trained large language model and then fine tune it for your own company based on the guidelines, based on the knowledge, based on the PDF, based on the document that you upload to that. Like for example, AI system, you can redefine it and you can fine tune it for that specific purpose. And that model can be used in like legal system, can be used in like financial system. It can be used as a customer, like for example, agent. It can be used in any fields that you want. It's just matter of fine-tuning large language model for that specific purpose. So that's something that many companies actually use it. So they try to fine-tune like lots of large language models. And you know that lots of these large language models are open source like Llama or Mistral. So these large language models are open source and you can just run it locally. And then you can fine tune it. You need to just use new data set, for example, in healthcare, in finance, and in legal like environment. Then you're gonna train it again in order to just adapt or, for example, change the parameters based on that specific purpose that you want. So that's something that we can just talk about as a kind of large language model these days in business.
No, great. I mean, talking about projects and the research that you've been engaged in and that also different industries and fields are coming together in, maybe you could also touch on this subject to give us a little bit more context for history, which is like in the last 50 or so years, we've had what have been considered AI winters, one in the 70s and one in the 90s where investment and research kind of went up and down based on how, I guess, people felt confident in the technology as it was developing. So where would you say this current boom in AI innovation and funding, A, took off, and maybe B, is this kind of like another cycle of this up and down for AI, or are we kind of going into that full speed ahead trajectory of that technology revolution that AI was supposed to theoretically give us?
So, speaking of AI winter, so first of all, we need to understand why this AI winter happened and can we just predict that we're going to have another AI winter or not? So if I just want to give kind of like brief overview of what you said about AI winter. So it's, as you mentioned, so it's kind of period of time where no funding or no effort, like serious effort is just going into AI because people just get disappointed in what is done, right? So something like, for example, in the 70s or 80s that we have kind of like AI winter that happened. And the reason that AI winter happened is also very important because if we want to predict that we're going to have another winter or not, we need to understand why that AI winter happened. So I'm going to just, I don't want to be technical, but to some degree, so let's just talk about the reason that why this AI winter happened. So the first reason is that, so the early AI systems, it just were built on a deterministic formula. What does that mean? It means that, so it was mainly based on if-then. If X, then Y. If you have this sign and symptom, then you are diagnosed with this specific, for example, disease. This is not the AI that we know. This is deterministic. This is just based on lots of if-then. It's called rule-based AI. So it's just a very like traditional types of prediction or classification. And imagine if you have like early AI medical diagnosis system, we need to have millions of if then. So for example, if something like, for example, COVID, if we have, for example, if new COVID like a variant appeared like with different symptoms, so the system cannot like adapt it unless you manually program it. So it means that those traditional deterministic formulas in AI couldn't learn from data. So it couldn't learn from data because it's just based on some predefined rules or logic, right? It's not something that they can learn from new situation or data. That's one of the reasons that AI winter happened. The second one, if I just want to explain a little briefly, so those early AI systems just rely on logical reasoning. So logical reasoning means that, so like something like that. For example, if they want to solve a logical problem for decision making, so they try to explore all possible combination of variables. I'm going to give you one example. For example, for around like, if I'm not mistaken, 1997, that we had like Deep Blue from IBM that built Garry Kasparov. So that's the chess. That's for the chess. So that IBM AI could like come up with all possible combination of like, for example, legal position for chess. That is kind of, if I'm not mistaken, is around like 10 to the power of 46 like legal position. See, this is the way that those systems actually solve the legal reasoning and the logical reasoning. So, but what is the problem? The problem is that if the size of the problem grow, you have huge number of combinations, right? And then it's going to be kind of impractical and kind of impossible to find solutions just with a reasonable time frame and also handling real world complexity. So because this is not possible for all, for example, logical reasoning, you just consider all possible combination of variables. You could do that, but just think of the compute, the GPU, how much energy you need to serve for that. And also, is it kind of practical or not? That's another reason that actually got lots of like investors just got disappointed. And that's another reason that we had the AI winter. But can we just predict that, for example, now based on whatever that happened in AI and especially generative AI, and also as I mentioned, so like the next move, like for example for like robotics or agentic AI and also AGI, can we just predict that we're gonna have AI winter? I personally don't think so. So AI is just here to like make things easier, faster, smarter, and make lots of things accessible. I don't think we're gonna have another type of disappointment that can lead to another AI winter, because it's just the company just started. So we haven't like seen lots of things. We just like more to go. So there are lots of things that we can expect. As I mentioned, one of the things is that so we can completely revolutionize healthcare. So we can use AI to generate and just discover new medication for each person, right? So just more to go. It's not something that you're gonna say, no, AI cannot solve anything anymore. Okay, we need to stop. We need to just think of another thing. I don't think so. I like 99%. I predict that is not something that we're gonna see in future.
Well, I think we kind of wanted to transition into a more sort of startup versus the bigger companies, like OpenAI being a bigger one, and then the startups being the ones that maybe they could purchase, or maybe that Google could purchase. Could you talk about the concept of maybe AI entrenchment, where just a handful of firms are kind of achieving a global dominance versus the startups that are having maybe a hard time competing in that same space?
One of the things that I usually try to explain about the startups and also the whole AI competition is that so AI actually is good for lots of startups. So as you can see here these days, so as I mentioned, there is an AI for that, because new startup just emerge every day. So there are some new startup just pops up. They're trying to fine tune, like for example, those pre-trained model because it's already there. You don't need to create something from scratch. So there are some like open source large language model or generative AI that is there. What you need to do is you just need to have kind of innovation in order to fine tuning and add some innovation to that and use it for another purpose. So that's why I believe that this is a good opportunity. This is a very big opportunity for startups to start new things because lots of things are already done and it's just lots of like big companies actually paved the way for a startup to come and just come up with some new things. So I know lots of a startup these days who just try to raise money and funds in order to, for example, to come up with some innovation in like healthcare, in finance, in supply chain management. So the only caveat, the only like concern that usually we have with a startup is that the data. So because if you want to fine tune or if you want to just have something from scratch, you need to have quality data. And so this is maybe one of the problems that actually startup face is that sometimes they don't have quality data. Sometimes they need to use synthetic data. Sometimes they need to use like data augmentation. But these are some remedy for that. That actually there are different ways that these days you don't need to use real data. You can use AI to generate data for you. So it's called synthetic data. So to some extent, so this problem actually solved, but still my concern is that in some area that is kind of like serious, like healthcare, finance, or some area like legal environment, so the data that you're going to use in order to fine tune or train your model from scratch is not correct. It's not like you don't use quality data. There are lots of missing data. There are lots of wrong data. Or we're going to use biased data. You're going to use data that is discriminating against a specific group of people. So if you use biased data or wrong data, so your algorithm just will be wrong. Your recommendation will be wrong, and the AI system will just doomed to failure. So that's one of the things that we have as a kind of concern for a startup. But generally, I believe that so there are lots of opportunities for a startup in order to still just start something new. There are lots of opportunity to even start or just modify some of these existing model, but also they need to just think of the better way to train their model, or there are some new like innovations that so a startup can use to train their model. And we have noticed this, like for example, in couple of months that lots of startups use kind of innovative mechanisms in order to better train their model with like in a cheaper way. Like for example, a mixture of expert, they just use multiple token prediction or GPU optimization and hardcore like programming. So or reinforcement learning. So to be exact. These are the innovative ways that actually a startup can use in order to train their model like cheaper, and also they don't need to have huge amount of like data set because they can use like synthetic data. I still think that there are lots of opportunity for startups.
And speaking on that, the whole act of fine tuning, we were kind of interested if maybe you could share some particular lessons that from the past and from what you've seen that managers should be mindful of when moving forward?
One of the things that we do for fine tuning, especially for example, the research that I have for like a large language model that we use for like healthcare purposes. So fine tuning is the approach that we try to just like, for example, use one of these like pre-trained model and just change some like parameters or the weights or the like biases of the model in order to just train it for that specific purpose. So that's going to be the fine tuning. So one of the things that we need to know for fine tuning is that for fine tuning, you need to have another data set. So that's the data set. Again, we are talking about data. So another data set is important because you want to fine tune. It means you're going to train the already trained model. You're going to train it one more time for that specific purpose. So that's why we're gonna change some of the parameters of the model based on new data. Again, that's a challenge. The data is good. We have lots of missing data. We have lots of dirty data. So this is the problem that we have with fine tuning, and we need to make sure we have the quality data as the first step. The second step is that so fine tune, sometimes, for example, you don't need to just train the model from scratch. Again, you can just fine tune or train just a portion of a pre-trained model. That's another one, because sometimes if you want to do fine tune, maybe also it's gonna be costly. So maybe it's gonna for example, take some time. So these are the things that we as for example, data scientists or programmers, we need to understand that if you want to fine tune, for example, a model, first of all, what is the exact reason? What is the exact purpose of fine tuning? You wanna just fine tune, for example, the AI model for example, new type of classification. For example, the way that we did it, for example, we try to fine tune some models for cancer detection, right? So for cancer detection, we try to have another type of data set for cancer based on new type of MRI, CT scans. So then we're gonna train the model. So this is cancer, this is not. This is cancer, this is not. And the model gonna learn, right? So we don't need to create another GPT from scratch, because we don't have time and money and infrastructure and GPUs that OpenAI actually use to train a model. But what we're gonna do, we're gonna borrow that model as we call it foundation model, right? The foundation model. The foundation model is that already trained model. So then we're gonna just add our new data set, as I mentioned, for example, for cancer detection. So the data set is gonna be millions of MRIs or CT scans or X-rays. And then we're gonna train the model again based on the weights, based on the, for example, new parameters that we define. And then, so the model gonna learn, okay, now the task is to classify one MRI as cancer or not, right? Then we're gonna just we're gonna do fine tuning again. We're gonna do fine tuning again in order to increase accuracy. Because maybe, for example, because fine tuning is kind of iteration. It's not like one thing and that's it. So we're gonna do it again and again, and change the weights, change the parameters, and I'm gonna change some of the, for example, something like learning rates or something like that. That's the technical things. Then at the end of the day, we're gonna just find, okay, what is accuracy level? So what is this a reliable model or not? Specifically for healthcare, the reliability is very important, because if your AI model just come up with some bugs or some wrong recommendation, so that's gonna be the big challenge for AI developer and also the AI company, because your model is not clinically tested. So you need to test it, you need to do validation again and again and again. It's kind of like iteration in order to make sure your fine-tuning model is good for that specific task, for example, for that cancer detection. So this is all the process that actually companies need to do for fine-tuning. So, but comparing fine-tuning with just training a model from scratch, so fine-tuning is easier, is also cheaper, so you don't need to have the whole model trained one more time. So we have another project that also I've been involved. This is also related to robotics. So it's called robotic surgery. So I'm gonna also explain it a little bit. So if you want it, I can talk about it more. So robotic surgery, that's another thing that I'm involved with. It's kind of minimally invasive option for complicated procedures. So this robotic surgery just allows for a greater precision, smaller incisions, and also a quicker recovery time. So I have two types of project on that. So one of them is that one of them is technical, the other one is behavioral. For the technical one, so we are trying to analyze all the existing robotic surgical system. Like one of the famous one is called Da Vinci surgical system. So in order to explore how this system can enhance surgical precision, and how they can improve like patient outcomes, and also how they can transform healthcare education. And you know that this type of robotic surgery nowadays is just being used a lot in healthcare education, especially to provide like younger like surgeons with some advanced training tools, and also simulated like based learning, and also immersive environment. The next one that is kind of behavioral is that, so while like many patients actually like it because of like reduced recovery time, but there are lots of patients that still express concern about like trusting a robot with their lives, right? So if you have the option that, okay, someone, for example, a surgeon gonna do the surgery, or you have the option that, for example, the robotic surgery, like surgical kits can be used for your surgery. So our research just shows that so lots of people don't like it. So why people don't like it or reject the robotic surgery? We have lots of reasons for that. One of them is lack of trust. Although it's going to be easier for them, so although they're going to provide the reduced recovery time, still the trust is not there, right? Still the trust is not there. And it's going to take some time for people to get used to it, that, hey, robotic surgery is not something like scary. So it's just something that, like, for example, surgeon can use the robotic arms in order to do the surgery easier and smaller like incisions. And also we're going to have better and quicker recovery time, because people are not aware of the benefits. They just concerned about, for example, maybe there are some bugs in that, and also to some extent the concerns are okay, so are acceptable. So they're concerned about security. Maybe there's kind of bug in your robotic surgery. Maybe someone can hack your robotic surgery. So all of the concerns are kind of acceptable to some extent. But to me, people, I mean, generally, the public are not aware of these opportunities, are not aware of this robotic surgery benefits. They are just concerned about something like security, privacy, or something like, for example, they don't trust a robot because they think that if there is kind of like malfunction, who is responsible for that? If something happened, who is responsible for that? Accountability is a big deal here. So responsibility is a big deal, and here is not very clear for lots of patients. So I think hospitals, if they want to use robotic surgery, they need to have a very good marketing campaign in order to explain it, in order to just debrief people, in order to show, okay, yeah, this is the way that it works. These are the benefits, and these are some of the concerns that we can address. So yeah, these are the things that I have been working on related to robotics.
So we know that, for example, in California recently, there was an attempt to pass legislation for regulation on AI, and it didn't go through. And mainly the concern, of course, there's many different concerns when it comes to regulating AI, or what motivates regulating AI, whether it's for economic reasons, humanitarian reasons, what have you. So maybe just touching on the idea of AI regulation, whose responsibility is it a government role? Is it something the private sector has to regulate? Kinds of things.
Okay, so let's just explain that one. I'm gonna just explain my personal idea about the regulations, and also what is the best way to actually do that. So actually, about the regulations, we need to know that, so the first type of like comprehensive legal framework for AI regulation just comes with the European Union. So European Union had the first comprehensive like legal framework for AI, if I'm not mistaken, 2024, so March 2024, and they call it European Union AI Act, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the first one. Then also like the same like time, so government also tried to have something like that. So the first one that we have in US, so around like 2022, so that's called the AI Bill of Rights. So that is something from government, and this is coming from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. And they just try to provide some principles and also guidelines to protect, like, for example, citizen rights. So there are some guidelines about safety, some algorithmic, like discrimination, data privacy, and like human alternatives and something like that. This is the first step. After that, so we had, like, in 2023, we have the AI executive order on safe and also secure and trustworthy. So this is another one that we have. So this executive order tried to establish new standard for AI safety and security and protect, like, Americans' privacy and also advance equity and also civil rights. So then the next move that we had is that for the new administration, so President Trump just appoint someone, this is the PayPal, the former executive PayPal, so David Sachs. So David Sachs is called as AI and crypto czar. So now he's the person in charge to just work with different, like, agencies, definitely to shape, like, federal policy on emerging technology, and like how AI and cryptocurrency will be regulated and integrated across industries. So based on the executive order that we have, so, like, there are, like, some parts related to that executive order. That's the in order to enhance Americans' AI leadership, like for example, the AI system should be free from, like, ideological bias or engineered like social agenda. And so also they try to revoke some of the previous executive order in order to just give more freedom to, like, startups in AI, in order to develop some AI actually so responsibly. So that's something that we have. And so as far as I know, this within, like, 180 days. So this, like, for example, there are lots of committees involved, like a special advisor for AI and crypto, as I mentioned, so AI czar, and also the president for national security affairs, and lots of other like agencies are involved. So they need within 180 days. So they need to just submit their, like, proposal to a president, a kind of action plan to achieve the policy for example, in order to help US, for example, get the AI, like the AI leadership in the world. So this is something that it just happened recently, but generally, so the recent ideas about regulations is that, and also this is kind of also my perspective is that, so we cannot completely and fully control and monitor AI, right? This is not something that we can control, because otherwise we don't have lots of innovations. Otherwise, we don't have lots of startups in different fields. So instead, we can just establish some best practices, some principles, some guidelines, some like guardrails in order to ensure that is responsible development and use without like seeking to completely restrict it, right? So startups should like have the freedom to develop AI systems that are free from like those biases and discriminations and also those social agendas. So in this way, we can allow like a startup to innovate across different fields. And so this approach, I believe that this approach also can drive responsible AI adoption while strengthening the US leadership in AI advancement. So this is something that we have, but what's going to happen in future, we need to wait and see what's going to be the proposal from this new administration, that they need to provide proposal within 180 days. But I believe that is going to be more freedom for startups, and they're going to just revoke, remove some of the macro level control and monitoring of AI. So people need to upskill. People need to just understand that we need to have new type of skills, so that something that even that sometimes I said that, for example, for future CEO, for future managers, so there are 3 types of relationship that they need to manage: human employees, robots and AI agents, and interaction between human and AI. Now we need to upskill. We need to understand how we can manage interaction between human and AI. This is something that should be added to our school. This is something that should be added to our strategy. This is something that should be added to our work structure, because people now are supposed to work and have lots of interaction with AI and agents, right? So this is something that I call it as upskilling. Some jobs, it just takes some time to be completely automated. Maybe in like future it may happen, but some jobs that still need like cognitive skills, and most of the, for example, things that we have in psychology, so is not very easy to be automated. And sometimes something about art and also like creating art. Yes, AI can generate lots of like image or videos or audios or song or music or whatever. What I usually say that sometimes something is lacking, right? I don't know how to say that. Is kind of, it lacks soul. It lacks like human touch. I don't want to say it's emotion, because you can fake emotion using AI, but it lacks some soul. So that's why I always thinking about that. So can we compute creativity? Maybe in future we can. Maybe in future, if you show me or just play a video that is by AI or created by AI, I say, okay, yeah, this is good because it's creative. So I cannot distinguish it. But now I can distinguish. Now I can say that this song is just written or just created by AI, because there is no soul in that. So that's something that I always say. And I just want to add something, and I'm going to finish it. So something that I usually say that, so lots of people are just talking to me that, hey, there are lots of AI for my job. I don't know which one to use. There are lots of AI tools. You know, having access to countless AI tools to improve your work, but never using those is like wearing an expensive watch, but you're still constantly running late, or you're still asking a stranger for the time. So what I'm trying to say is that familiarity with AI tools is pointless if you don't put them to work. So if you don't use those productivity tools, other will use, and those may replace you in your position and work. So that's why everyone should get ready, try to just learn something, try to learn how to use technology, and try to just be like critical with the AI generated information.
Maybe you could tell us if there's a specific aspect in the field of AI that you feel is not receiving the attention that it really deserves.
Okay, so that's a very good question, but I don't know if I just answer is gonna be long. Okay, I'm gonna just make it very short. You know, my passion in AI is mainly in healthcare. And so there are something in healthcare that we can use AI, but still, so people are not like paying attention to this, is something that actually we use AI in mental health. I don't want to say that so this can replace, like, for example, psychologists or psychiatrists in mental health. No. There is something that we have as a kind of AI that we can use in mental health. So actually, we develop lots of like these applications. There are lots of existing applications that we call it AI power applications for mental health. But still, I think is not that like successful. So people actually so lots of people actually are not aware of this, or maybe if they're aware, they don't want to use it. If I want to explain it like very short, so it's another domain of AI in mental health support. So it's kind of like applications that you can use and in order to manage your stress, in order to manage your anxiety and also depression. So these AIs so is fine-tuned, right? This AI model is fine-tuned based on cognitive behavioral therapy or mindfulness or different types of meditation like guidelines and real-time like emotional support. So there are lots of apps like that. And these apps are trying to use conversational AI to offer some, like, for example, users safe space to discuss their emotions, receive personalized like advices, and also just access like different like coping strategy anytime, anywhere that they want. So it's kind of accessibility. So you have like AI assistant for your mental health 24/7. So whenever you want, you have someone to talk to. So definitely, so this cannot replace people. They cannot replace human. They cannot replace like physicians or psychologists. But this is a good thing that some AI models that we use in those applications are very good. I'm going to just give you one of them. So for example, we can use AI in mental health. Those AI models are trained in order to early detect the sign of suicides. So the more you talk to these AI models, the better they can work, and also they can function and find out any signs of suicide. So this is one of the easiest one that I can talk about. So, but still, so people are kind of worried about that, or people are not even aware of this type of AI application for mental health. But I think this is something can grow a lot, especially for some specific tasks, as I mentioned, for example, for suicide like commitment, for suicide like prediction and classification. This is something that is very useful. If the AI can find out, for example, some suicide signs or some something like that, they can just send alert as soon as possible to healthcare providers. And we try to augment the human like capabilities, not replacement. I would say this is gonna be one of the biggest one, but it still is not that successful.
And that concludes our 7th episode of the Panther Business Briefing. Stay tuned for our upcoming episode, where we interviewed the director of FIU's MBA Business Analytics program, Dr. Lina Bouyad, for a continued discussion on AI's expanding role in business and in society. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next week.